talk to you a bit later on about the latest goings on with Tyson Fury and so on, but let's talk about Joe Joyce. Where are we at now with his career? I know it's fresh from the victory at the weekend, but his next fight, I mean, you must be talking to various opponents about that. Where would you like to go next? Is it as simple as Alexander Usyk?
Well, Joe knows this. We've had conversations about it. The unification looks like it's going to happen early next year. So Joe will fight early next year as well, and that set himself up to be for the mandatory, because I think the WBO is the next one in. So he's the interim champion. So he'll fight for the world title next year. And in the meantime, he wants to keep busy, and we're
in the meantime.
After his performance, Frank, against Joseph Parker, I mean, surely no one in the heavyweight division now is going to want to fight him.
Exactly.
I wouldn't want to, that's for sure. He's a handful. Look, it was a magnificent fight, and I think that was Joe's coming out fight. You know, he's put in some good performances over the last few years, but he was in with a guy, former world champion, never been stopped. And
what's good, family? It's your man the YB back once again. Big shout out to your man the YB, number one sugar mama in the game right now, Lizzie Corinne, for coming through and boosting the coin at all times. So we just heard there from Frank Scammon, and I'm sorry, but I've never honestly felt so passionate about this Joe Joyce situation. Joe Joyce, I do think he should hire me. I'll work for free, ain't gonna lie, but at the end of the day, man, Joe Joyce needs to hire me. I'm gonna write you the fire bars. Yeah, because if Joe Joyce had a mouthpiece on him, Joe Joyce right now should be out here airing out Usyk, applying pressure publicly to Usyk. That's what needs to happen. And again, for me, I think the rest of the month I'm going to be doing daily videos on Joe Joyce, because there's so many things that he needs to be doing right now. And applying public pressure to Usyk. Listen, we know for a fact it's 10 times easier. In fact, it's infinitely easier to duck someone. Oh, IB fighters aren't scared. I don't care what you say. Yeah, Usyk already said 18 months ago he's not fighting Joe Joyce because he doesn't bring any money. Yeah? Alexander Usyk offered Joe Joyce 7% split. Now, I'm sorry, but that don't sound to me like someone who wants to fight. Oops. Yeah, Mr. He'll fight anyone, YB, fighters aren't scared. Oh, listen, if a fighter ain't scared, he don't offer 7%. Yeah, that's what he don't do. And Joe Joyce should be out here exposing all these facts. These are facts, people. Usyk said 7%. Why isn't Joe Joyce and his team out here saying, listen, Usyk, we know you ain't going to fight me unless I got a mandatory. And that's why I'm doing what Dillian White did, but rather than wait 3 years. Yeah? The precedents are out there, people. We know if you a closed mouth. Number one, we know a closed mouth don't get fed. Number two, we know if you don't get your legal things sorted out. Dillian White waited 3 years and then got beat and then tried to sue after waiting. Like, what the fuck? Who does that? Don't wait. Get the legal thing going ASAP. The minute you think something's not right, i.e. Joe Joyce, many people don't know this, Joe Joyce had a WBO fight ordered with Usyk in February 2021, 18 months ago. Joyce was already ordered. Yeah? Since then, what's he got? Nothing. He got a smidgen fight with Parker. That's not the point. Joe Joyce should have been had his WBO opportunity. Should have been had that. And now where is he? You just heard there from Frank Warren. Yeah? Frank was like, And you already know, yeah? You already know. The minute people start going, and mixing their words, you know, number one, they're lying, and you know, number two, there's clandestine things going on for Frank Warren. Frank Warren's a rational man. And what that means is, listen, I'm not being funny, Joe Joyce. You are the number 3 heavyweight for Frank Warren. He wanted you to lose the Dubois fight. He had no intention of you winning that fight. Do you understand? Obviously, Tyson Fury is above you. But I think Team Joyce think they're number... I don't know what they think. To be quite frank, I don't know what Team Joyce are doing. When they lost that opportunity to fight Usyk in February 2021, I didn't hear nothing from Team Joyce. There should have been uproar. They should have been demanding step aside from the AJ and Usyk fight. Okay, if you want to take away my mandated shot against Usyk, You need to give me some step aside. Otherwise, we're going to court. You can't order a fight and then just change it. And if you do just change it, I want some compensation. Why should my career be delayed? Bottom line, yeah, if the WBO wanted to order AJ versus Usyk, they could have done that. You can't mess with people's lives, contractually speaking as well. But guess what? Team Joyce, nowhere to be found. And I wouldn't mind so much, yeah, if Joe Joyce was 30 and he had time to be wasting 12, 24, 18 months. Even then it's not ideal, but you know what? So be it. My man's 37 years old. He don't have a year, 18 months to wait. Yeah? And I don't understand. No one seems to have any urgency. I'm not even involved with Joe Joyce. I've got more passion than anyone on his team. For the last week, I've been trying to reach out to Team Joyce and ask them, what's going on? What are you actively doing right now to ensure, not to sit there and say, oh, I think Usyk next. What do you mean you think Usyk next? We know Usyk is not going to fight you unless it's absolutely demanded by WBO. We know that. There's no way Usyk is going to sit there and say, oh, I've got a $40 million Fury fight, or I can have a $5 million Joyce fight. He ain't going to do that. It's your job, it's Joe Joyce's team's job to say, listen, we don't give a fuck about Undisputed. And that's the point here. I'm going to go back and replay what Frank Warren said, but I know what he said. Frank Warren said, Joe, we think Joe's going to have to wait for the Undisputed, and Undisputed will be in February, March. Who believes that? And that's what I mean. When people start and ahhing, number one, and number two, when people start lying, blatantly lying, and trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. Not low IQ, but people who aren't sharp here will be lulled into a false sense of security. Team Joyce have been told Undisputed's happening in February and they'll get their shot in April. Let me tell you now, Undisputed ain't going to happen until the second half of 2023 at best. I think most likely it goes Q4. Bear in mind, Fury's fighting in December. Bear in mind, Fury will probably retire 5 times. Bear in mind, negotiations would take 10 years. So when you add it all up, to think Joe Joyce is going to be getting his shot, to think, if any of you think Undisputed, let me know below. How many of you think Undisputed's taking place in February or March? I want to know how many people. In fact, I might even do a poll. How many of you, man, think Undisputed will take place in February or March? Got to be having a laugh. It won't happen until September next year, I reckon. A year from now. Yeah? And if Team Joyce sit around and allow, because from Frank Warren's point of view, he don't care if your career's slow. You're not a big money maker for him. At the moment, Frank, his key thing is to suck Tyson Fury off, because that's where the money is for him. Yeah? If Frank Warren has to delay your career for 2 years to suck Tyson Fury off, that is exactly what he'll do, Joe. You are the third concern of Frank Warren. He thinks about you third in line. And the fact, yeah, Joe Joyce has the hottest win right now. And the fact Joe has the hottest win, and all we keep hearing from Frank Warren is, have to wait for Undisputed. What do you mean have to wait for Undisputed? No, he'll have to, listen, end of the day, yeah, if you take the WBO to court, or I've looked on the website, yeah, the WBO has a grievance process. You can email people and put a grievance in, put a complaint in. If I was Team Joyce, I'd be doing that as a standard. And let the WBO know, we've been waiting for 18 months already. You stole our Usyk fight, yeah? You stole that, and now we're waiting again. We want it ordered now. Now, if it happens that the WBO says, listen, because the problem is, people, a lot of you don't realise, Undisputed, it's not even being negotiated, people. Never mind a date. Fair enough. If Undisputed had a fixed date, then that's a bit different. You can say, well, YB, what can we really do? The date's there. All we can do is work around it, but it's up in the air right now. It's up in the air. Now, if Team Joyce sit around tiddling their dicks for the next 3 months, and then Undisputed does get made for September 2023, then you are fucked. Because once that date's set in stone, you ain't got a leg to stand on. You can't complain afterwards. And also bear in mind, there will be a rematch clause. Do any of you honestly think Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk are going to allow themselves to potentially lose and not have a rematch? Naturally, the rematch clause is great because it means you get double payday. So for the loser, no one wants to lose a fight like that, yeah, and not have a guaranteed double payday. It's free money, isn't it? Not to mention, Usyk, let's say Usyk loses, yeah, why would Usyk not demand a rematch clause? He has 3 belts. Why would you not want a double $40 million payday? Exactly. So the fact that Frank Warren's sitting there and saying, oh yeah, Joe will get his shot in April. Well, Joe won't get his shot until 2024. Because Fury will retire, he'll do all the other shit and whatever else. Also, Frank's lying. Frank lied saying the WBO is next. The WBO just had a mandatory in October 2021, which was AJ versus Usyk. That was the mandatory. And that's been the most recent fight, hasn't it? So, unfortunately, Joe, and this is what I mean when I say people are snidey. Why is Frank Warren telling Joe that the WBO's in the next one? It's not. The next one is the WBA. Because the WBA has not been served for God knows how long. The IBF was 2020. Kubrat Pulev, December 2020. Yeah, the WBO was 2021. September, October, Usyk. And that leaves the WBA, which hasn't been had. And the WBA is guess who? Daniel Dubois. So you got to ask yourself here, fair enough, yeah, Frank Warren came out and said, listen, Joe, you're in line behind Dubois. At least he wouldn't be lying. But why is Frank Warren blowing smoke up your ass? Why is he gassing you up, telling you you're next when you're clearly not? There's absolutely no evidence that Joe Joyce or the WBO is the next claim. Frank Warren's told you that, hoping you and your team remain ignorant. And I wonder, this Adam Morley guy, the lawyer, just keeps hanging around all the time. What's he doing there if he isn't looking into these things? Do you know what I'm saying? Just a guy just hanging around. What is your... Adam, what's your job? You're supposed to be a lawyer, yet you lost the WBO shot against Usyk back in 2021, and you didn't litigate. There's nothing more useless than a lawyer, yeah, who doesn't litigate. Good for nothing. You had the fight ordered, and they cancelled it, and you didn't get no compensation. And now you're here, and from an exposure point of view, Joe Joyce is hot right now, but he has no obligations, as in there's nothing locking him into anything. And I'm telling you now, no one is going to want to fight Joe Joyce without a belt. No one. If you think Deontay Wilder, yeah, is going to suddenly come and fight Joe for relatively small money, when he's going to be eyeing Fury 4, Dillian White even. The Dillian White fight is over 2 times the size of the Joe Joyce fight. The AJ fight is probably 5 times the size. The Fury fight is big. There's like 4 people in front of Joe Joyce for pretty much every fighter. Even Dillian White. Even him. He'll want AJ, he'll want Wilder over Joyce. Now, if Joyce gets a belt, that's a different story, but that's the point. Team Joyce right now should be 10 out of 10 pursuing the WBO to get their mandatory ordered now. Yeah? Get it ordered now. If I was Team Joyce, I'd be going to the WBO, I'd be citing what happened last year in 2021. And using that as ammunition to say, listen, we've been done wrong before, we've been put out of place before, we didn't complain then, now we want our payback. And how you can pay us back is by ordering this fight before Undisputed. We'll fight Usyk in February, which by the way, is a lot. That's 6 months Usyk will have had, which is a standard time. We'll fight Usyk in February, and then Undisputed can take place in July. The winner can fight for Undisputed. Because Tyson Fury is fighting in December anyway. So he's not going to be ready. Really, Joe Joyce fighting Usyk in February, yeah, makes no difference. Because Undisputed weren't going to happen. Because Tyson Fury is fighting in December. Undisputed can't happen until July anyway. Now, if the WBO orders Usyk versus Joyce for February, Or even January. If you want it, you do it in January. Yeah? I couldn't give a fuck about what Usyk wants to do. I'm afraid to say, when you're a champion, you have to defend your belts. About you want to have your family. You got X amount of time to have your family. You're an active champion. I'm sick of these active champions. I mean, who else in the world, gets to fanny around for 5 months? No, that's your job. Your job is to be a world champion. And your job is to represent. Your job is not to fanny around with your wife and kids. If you want to do that, it's something called retirement. Yeah? If you're an active champion, you be active. Fight, but you need some time with your kids. You need to stay active is what you need to do and represent the belts, or not, or let them go. It's up to you. Listen, Usyk, if you want to spend more time with your wife and kids, let the belts go. Because Joe, he on his thing right now. Yeah, I'm sick of this game having to wait around for clowns to do what they want to do. The game's called boxing. It's not called wife and kids in. It's not called whatever else in. It's called crack on and represent your belts, or don't. I mean, let them go. Yeah, far too many jokers and player-arounders in here. So like I said, that's what Joe should be on. That's what his team should be on right now. Getting it ordered. The Usyk versus Joyce fight ordered for February. Now, there's a good chance Usyk may just vacate. Now, if that's the case, guess what? From Joe's point of view, which by the way, Frank Warren and certainly Joe Joyce's management team, that's all they should care about from Joe Joyce's point of view. From Joe Joyce's point of view, we don't care about Undisputed. I don't give a fuck if that happens or not. Literally. If I'm managing Joe Joyce, I couldn't care if all the belts get split up as long as I get mine. But it's like Joe's team are saying, I heard Adam Morley and the other idiot saying, Joe's going to have to wait for Undisputed. Who said that? Who said that? Because I haven't heard the WBO come out and say he's going to have to wait. That's what Frank Warren's been saying. Who said that? Now, fair enough, if the WBO comes out and says, Joe, you're going to have to wait for Fury and Usyk to finish fucking around and negotiating, and maybe. That's the thing, people. Let's not forget, again, the Undisputed isn't booked. So for the WBO to say you're going to have to wait for Undisputed, it's like you don't even know it's possible. Fury could lose in December. Fury could become injured. Fury could retire again, and these are all the things that I'd be saying as Joe's representative. If the WBO tell me I have to wait until Undisputed, I'll say, well, Undisputed doesn't exist. For all we know, Fury's going to retire. For all we know, Fury's going to want more time off. Why should we wait when we can fight in January, February, and the winner of that fight can then fight in July? That's the thing that keeps everyone treated fairly. Usyk's had 6 months between his fights. Yeah? Joe Joyce has been treated, but that's the only way to do it. It's not fair to have Joe Joyce on the sideline for even more time, hoping or waiting on a whim that Undisputed's going to happen. And again, as Team Joyce, I'd be saying, listen WBO, you want us to wait around even more after we lost the opportunity back in February 2021, and after we've just seen how Fury's acted in the AJ negotiations. Why should we have to sit here and wait while Fury messes around with negotiations and they fail? So are you telling us we have to wait for the next 6 months while Fury dicks around with negotiations, calling him off and setting deadlines? Why is that right? These are all the things you bring into the argument. Yeah? And guess what? If at which point they still say no, you're going to have to sit there like a sideman, that's when you say, listen, fine, we believe our case is strong, we're taking it to the court of arbitration. Yeah? You put it out there, fuck it. From Joe Joyce's point of view, you ain't got nothing to lose apart from valuable time. You're not trying to make friends. What are we doing here? Are we trying to make friends? Are you trying to be Tyson Fury's friend? Are you trying to be Frank Warren's friend? Or are you trying to run an efficient business? Or, Joe Joyce's team need to work out what business are they in. Are they in the Joe Joyce business, or are they in the sucking Frank Warren off and sucking Tyson Fury off and trying to be friends with everyone business? Because I'm sorry, but that's the way it comes across to me. Joe Joyce's team want to be friends with everyone. Oh yeah, Frank says we have to wait to I don't get that. How can Joe Joyce's team be saying we have to wait for Undisputed? Based on what? Maybe I'm missing something. I'd love for someone to explain. And so far, I've been sending tweets for the last week, and I understand it. I'm a small fry. I'm a nobody, but still. I've been sending tweets out just asking for some clarity here. Am I missing something? Someone please help me. In the comments, maybe some of you might know. Can someone please help me why Joe Joyce has to wait for Undisputed to be completed? Which again, hasn't even started negotiations yet. Fury hasn't even completed the negotiations for his next fight. Never mind the Undisputed one. And we've got to wait for something that doesn't even... We've got to wait for something, yeah, that's 2 eventualities down the line. Gotta be having a laugh. Not to mention people again, I'd also be citing Usyk in the last week said, okay, Fury's fighting in December. I want to have a fight. Yeah? And apparently Usyk's going to the Wilder and Hellenius fight. So apparently Usyk's looking to fix that up. So wait there a minute. Where does that leave me, Joe Joyce? If Usyk's, and again, these are all things you'd bring up in the... These are all the things there you'd bring up in the grievance to the WBO. Usyk's planning on having a fight with Wilder. So what am I supposed to do? Sit around dicking around, waiting for these clowns? And I'm telling you now, if Joe Joyce's team don't do this, he ain't going to have no meaningful fight for the next 18 months, I'd say, approximately. 18 months from now, Joe Joyce won't have fought for naffle. And that's what the evidence shows. Because guess what? For the last 18 months, Joe Joyce has fought for naffle. Yeah? He fought Joe Parker. That's supposed to be a final eliminator. Guess what? The Usyk fight against the Usyk and Joyce fight that was ordered in February 2021, that was a final eliminator as well that got cancelled. So Joe Joyce has done about 10 final eliminators. And this is what happened to Dillian Whyte. Difference is, Dillian Whyte did nothing for 5 years and then eventually did something. What's the point? It's too late then. It's no good waiting. You have to get on these things quick. You have to snap quickly. And I told everyone before, Frank Warren is a double, triple agent. I'm not saying Frank's a bad person. He's doing what he's protecting his interest. There's a reason, yeah, in the USA they have the Muhammad Ali Act, which doesn't allow promoters to be managers as well. Because, for clear reasons, a promoter has multiple fighters. Management teams, they're the ones who go to bat for their fighters. Look at the UFC's model. Yeah? The UFC's always, or Dana White's always batting heads with Ali Abdelaziz, all the different managers. Because the manager's job is to think about the fighter. Dana White's job is to think about the business. Yeah? Frank Warren's job, his job is to think about the business, which at this point in time is mainly Tyson Fury and mainly Daniel Dubois in terms of long-term prospects. Joe Joyce is number 3. It's Joyce's management team. They're the only ones here who stand in the way between Joyce getting cucked some more and getting sidelined some more or not. And unfortunately, I ain't seen... You tell me, what positive moves have you seen Team Joyce make? He just fought Hammer. And luckily, not because I'm being funny here, not because, let's not forget this, people. Joe Joyce didn't just get the Joe Parker fight because of something his team did. He got that because Joe Parker decided to throw him a bone. Do you understand? This wasn't great management and great execution. They got lucky. As it stood, Joe Joyce was going to fight, or as it stood here, if it wasn't for Joe Parker wanting this fight, Joyce had nothing guaranteed. Do you understand? It was Joe Parker that allowed him to have that fight. But apart from that, 2022 would have been Christian Hammer for Joyce. And go back, Joyce has already been inactive for a year. Joyce hasn't fought for a year, and he fought Hammer. It's like, what are these guys doing with this guy? You know he's older. Frank Warren should have this guy out every 6 months, if not more, especially when he's having fights like Hammer. Yeah, Joe Joyce fought Dubois in December, I think, 2020. It's been 2 years since then. What's Joyce done? In those 2 years, between the Dubois fight and now, Joyce has done nothing, has he? He beat Dubois, and 2 years have gone by, and he's just beat Parker. But that doesn't count, does it? It's been 2 full years in that period. He's done nothing. From 35 years old to 37, Joe Joyce's team allowed him to do nothing for 2 years. That's shocking, I'm sorry. It's shocking. But what it does show is Frank Warren ain't got no shame. And it also shows how incompetent Joe Joyce's team is. How can you allow a 35-year-old man in the prime of his life to be sitting around for 2 years? Explain that. I need to know. There needs to be an inquest. How's that possible? How can you allow Joe Joyce to sit around for 2 years doing fuck all? Who's doing that? Who's advising this guy? I'm sorry. Who's doing that? Joe Joyce has had no meaningful fights for 2 years. He just fought Parker, which really isn't even a meaningful fight. It leads nowhere in that sense. And now you're on the cusp of something meaningful, and people are telling you, you have to wait for Undisputed. And your own management team is echoing what Frank Warren's saying. Does your management team work for you? Are they representing your interests, or are they sucking Frank Warren off and representing his? Because as far as I'm concerned, they're representing Frank Warren. If your team are telling you have to wait for Undisputed, which is based on nothing but Frank Warren's wishes, Joe Joyce waiting for Undisputed doesn't benefit anything to do with him. That's a problem, in my opinion. If your team, are telling you to make decisions, to sit there and be a sideman, when doing so harms your own career, that's not on. That's corrupt, in my opinion. It seems to me Team Joyce are acting on behalf of Frank Warren. Or they're completely incompetent and just take whatever Frank says. And let's go back and, before I finish, let's go back and listen to what Frank Warren said again. Because now I've given you, man, all the information. It will be interesting to hear once again what this clown actually said. It'll be a lot deeper now. Here we go.
Champion. Joe, where are we at now with his, about the latest goings on with Tyson Fury and so on, but let's talk about Joe Joyce. Where are we at now with his career? I know it's fresh from the victory at the weekend, but his next fight, I mean, you must be talking to various opponents about that. Where would you like to go next? Is it as simple as Alexander Usyk?
Well, Joe knows this. We've had conversations about it. The unification looks like it's going to happen early next year. So Joe will...
The unification looks like it's going to happen early next year. And notice as well, Frank Warren says, me and Joe have had conversations about this. Yeah, Frank Warren, I bet you have told of Joe Joyce and his team certain things. That's your job. Yeah, your job is to line your pockets in the biggest fashion possible. So I'm under no illusions. Frank Warren has sat Team Joyce down and told him, listen, Joe, be a good boy, sit there, be quiet, and let me rob the bank with big money, with Tyson Fury. Because guess what? If Joe Joyce and his team do what they're supposed to do, that would potentially end up taking or splitting the belts up. And that means less income for Tyson Fury. Yeah, if Fury fights Usyk with only 2 belts, it's not undisputed anymore, is it? So Frank Warren has a direct conflict of interest right now, and the fact he's saying what he said is shocking. But really, again, I'm not blaming Frank. Frank's playing the game well. What I am pissed off at is Joe Joyce's team. How are they taking this? It's really starting to piss me off. But again, Joe, end of the day, man, I've been tweeting you for a minute, yeah, and if you want to be a cuck, you'll be a cuck. You'll be the same as Dillian White, all the other dopey guys. If you want to keep carrying on and just sucking your own team off and believing they want the best for you, there's a reason, yeah, historically. Joe, you won't be the first time, yeah, a management team had to be sacked. This ain't new. But throughout boxing history, boxers have had bad management and they've ended up in court with them or whatever. Yeah? Now, I don't know whether they're being purposefully kind of malicious, i.e., I don't know whether Adam Morley or whoever else has been paid off. I don't know. All I know is, if your team are telling you to sit there and wait for Undisputed when it serves no benefit to you, that's a problem. That's a problem. Their job's to serve your interests wholly, not, let's see how we can help Frank out and let's see how we can help the boxing world out. No. And I believe actually it helps the boxing world if Joe Joyce gets his shot immediately, because if Usyk can beat Joe Joyce, that then builds 10 times more anticipation for the Fury fight. Because if Usyk can beat a big 270-pound strong dude with cardio and heart and chin, something that AJ doesn't have, that makes him, I'll be honest with you, I think there's no way Usyk beats Fury. Now, if Usyk beats Joyce, it's a completely different conversation, if you get what I'm saying. If Usyk beats Joyce, then all cards are off. And that Fury versus Usyk fight goes from a 80-20 fight to a 55-45 fight, to me. But currently, and even to be quite frank, that's irrelevant. This guy here, telling Joe Joyce to sit there and be quiet and wait for you Undisputed, when he... Listen, Frank, you can't even get the AJ versus Fury fight negotiated for December. Frank, you haven't even got Fury's December fight sorted out, and you're telling Joe to sit around and wait for Undisputed. It looks like the Undisputed fight's going to happen in February. Based on what? You can't even tell us what the December fight looks like. And that Undisputed fight comes after the next fight in December. So what does Frank Warren mean it looks like? And I'd bet you, and this is what team, if I was Team Joyce, I'd be saying, okay, Frank Warren, show me what you've got. Show me what paperwork you've got that tells you the Fury versus Usyk fight is looking for February. Show me it. Guess what? He ain't got no paperwork. So he's just talking out of his arse. He's telling you what you want to hear. Yeah? Joe Joyce wants to hear, yeah, don't worry, Joe, the Undisputed fights happen really quickly. You go on holiday, have a good holiday, stretch your legs out. And when you come back, your mandatory is going to be in March. Who here believes that? Again, if anyone, and I'll listen, if I'm wrong, if Fury versus Usyk happens in February or March, I'll eat my fucking hat. It ain't happening until August, I'd reckon. At best, as well. I can see it dragging out until September, October, to be quite frank. Many of you have got short memories. AJ versus Pulev took place December 2020, yeah? AJ versus Fury, Undisputed, didn't get signed, and they were negotiating from December 2020 to May 2021. 6 months of negotiations, it got signed. Yeah? And then 2 weeks later, it got pulled. So don't tell me about how it's going to happen in February. Hey, Fury's fighting in December. He'll want some time off. For all we know, he'll retire in between. Because, by the way, them 6 months that Fury and AJ were negotiating, Fury retired a few times in there. That's just a fact. He retired, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not training, I'm going away. That's all documented. You can find it on this channel. So, again, why should Joe Joyce sit around waiting for all these uncertainties? Explain that. Why? How does this benefit Joe? Is he getting paid step aside? And that's another question. If Frank Warren comes out and says, listen, Joe, you're getting paid $1 million step aside, and that's different. At least then it's things are working for everyone. But for Joe to sit around and just keep taking more hard fights for the sake of taking them, now I ain't got a problem. I want Joe to be in hard fights. I think he beats all the hard fights, but it's not the point. The point is what you're entitled to. Joe Joyce right now is entitled to the top honours, the top world level honours. There's been, I've told you before the other day, I'm doing a video on this, but the evidence shows Joe Joyce is the most winning and the most achieved pre-world championship fighter in the history of the sport. I think throughout all weight divisions, but certainly the heavyweight division. I'm telling you, there's never been a heavyweight contender pre-world championship that's beaten in 14 fights, knocked out a Dubois and knocked out a Joe Parker. I don't believe it's ever happened like that. I don't believe any pre-world level contender has knocked out a Dubois caliber opponent and knocked out a Joe Parker caliber opponent. Doesn't exist in my opinion. And yet here he is. in 14 fights. People were sucking off Lomachenko for doing what he did. He weren't stopping. And yeah, he's smaller, but still, he hadn't fought no calibers of Dubois, and he hadn't fought no calibers of Joe Parker. Yeah? He was fighting, and he's got, God knows, he was been doing it since he was 2 years old. 400 amateur fights. Joe Joyce don't have all that. He is the most winning and most achieved boxer in history, in my opinion, for 14 fights. Bottom line, when you think about the fights he was having, Dillian Whyte went life and death with Ian Lewinson. Joe Joyce fought that guy on his first fight. Yeah, Dillian Whyte couldn't stop Ian Lewinson. Joe Joyce on his debut stopped the guy. Who does that? Do you know what I'm saying? Little things like that. And he's gone from leaps and bounds ever since. And I think it's shocking that this guy, at this point in his career, he doesn't have time to waste, and yet the vultures are out here vulturing. And I expect it from Frank Warren. I don't expect Joe Joyce's team to be impotent. No one seems to care though. I spoke to some people in the boxing industry. Everyone just seems to... everyone seems to be... It's really quite odd. I don't get it. Everyone is... Maybe it's because I'm not financially incentivized in any way. It's only the injustice for me that makes me fired up. At the end of the day, Joe, you need to take responsibility for this. Yeah, it's your career, and you can go on holiday if you want. I'm telling you now, when you're 41 years old, there'll be plenty of time to holiday. You can live on holiday. Right now, you need to be focusing on managing your management, because I believe you're being mismanaged. Yeah? Or you need to bring someone in. I'm telling you now, I'll do it for free. Yeah? If you bring me in and give me access to people who... If you bring me in and give me access to people who manage you, I'll stay on their neck. I want to know what they're doing. I want to know what Adam Morrill is doing. Your management team, their job here is to fulfill your wants and demands. Otherwise, what the fuck are you paying them for? Yeah, Adam Morrill's job is to sit there and say, Joe, what do you want in the next 6 months? Joe Joyce would say, I want my shot at Usyk WBO mandatory. Yeah, that means when Joe's on holiday, for the next few weeks, Adam Morrill every day should be putting in things in place to make that dream of WBO mandatory a reality. Like I said, he should be onto the WBO, contacting, going through the grievance process, going through essentially the complaints process to put in a thing. We want this shot now. Yeah? Again, does that guarantee you get it? No, but it does something, rather than sitting around just hoping things are going to drop out the sky. Number 2, Adam Morrill should be contacting Frank Warren and telling him, Frank, we ain't waiting around. This doesn't benefit my client whatsoever, waiting around. We're getting older by the day. And whilst that's not your fault, we want our shot now, and we don't see why we should have to wait for Tyson Fury, who can't even negotiate his December fight. Why should we wait for a fight that is 2 fights behind the current one? We ain't doing that. Yeah? Unless you can give us a good reason why we should. Are you paying us? Are you giving a step aside? What? How is this serving my client Joe Joyce for us to sit around waiting for what Tyson Fury may or may not do, and for what may or may not happen with Undisputed? Bear in mind, people, the WBO hasn't ordered shit. Fair enough, if the WBO had come out last month and said, Undisputed's happening, Joe Joyce, you have to sit and wait, mate, for the next year. If that's been ordered, then it's not... Yeah, you can still go to kind of court and address it that way and appeal or whatever, but it's kind of fair enough. But that's not the case, people. Frank Warren's out here telling people, it looks like Undisputed's going to happen. No, it don't. It doesn't even look like December 1st's going to happen about what Undisputed's going to do. Do you know what I mean? But like I said, that's what Team Joe Joyce is supposed to be on. And I said the other day, Team Joe Joyce should be on to Frank Warren and tell him, Frank, we believe you've got a conflict of interest between all the fighters you've got. Dubois, Fury, and whoever else. On that basis, you've told us you've essentially not fucked us, but you've essentially your advice you've given us is detrimental. You've told us to sit around and wait for a man who's extremely indecisive, who's extremely messy, and that's been your advice to us. On that basis, we believe you're essentially breaking your contract. Your contract as a promoter, naturally, is to... The contract Joe Joyce will have signed for Frank Warren won't have Joe Joyce having to put Tyson Fury and whoever else above him. So when Frank Warren gives you advice, or or whatever else that disadvantages you against another one of his clients, that's a problem. And I'll be telling Frank Warren, it looks here you've got a conflict of interest. We want to essentially end our contract and become free agents because we feel we are being prejudiced, in your decision-making process. And you line out all the reasons why, as I've explained. The WBA thing. You've told us the WBO is next. In reality, it's the WBA, which is another one of your clients. Why are you lying to us for? Why are you gassing us up? That's the first thing. The second thing, you've told us to sit around and waiting so another one of your clients can be treated more favourably. We don't care that Tyson Fury gets undisputed. We don't care that if we wait that Tyson Fury makes more money because the undisputed fight's bigger with more belts. We don't care about that. But yet, nonetheless, you've given us that advice. So you're giving us advice which directly benefits other clients, which tells us you're putting us further down the line. Therefore, you can sever this contract now, or we'll see you in court. Simple as that. At which point, I reckon Frank Warren will cut his loss and say, you know what, Joe Joyce, he's my number 3 heavyweight anyway. See you later. At that point, you go to Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn right now is washed up. Eddie Hearn ain't got nothing to do with heavyweights. That said, naturally, Eddie Hearn will be chomping at the bit to get back into the game. Yeah? And if you go to Eddie Hearn and say, Eddie, we want to get these belts back. AJ's lost them. We're going to get them back. And in doing so, we can also fuck Frank Warren off. Like getting in the way of Undisputed, essentially. Not getting in the way of it, but breaking it up. We want our belt, WBO belt. Eddie Hearn will get all of his clout and do whatever he can to get his new client, Joe Joyce, who is taken from... Imagine the narrative there. Eddie Hearn takes Joe Joyce. Eddie Hearn will have a rock-hard lob on for it. And if Eddie Hearn thinks he can get a sniff in and find a way back to them 3 belts, he'll be all over it. And that's what the key thing is here, people. You've got to make the right decisions. Frank Warren right now has got Joe Joyce number 3. If Joe Joyce goes to Eddie Hearn, he's going to be number 1 A-star client. Because that's Eddie Hearn's way back into the heavyweight, top of the heavyweight division. Frank Warren's not fussed. Honestly. Frank Warren thinks about Joe Joyce in the 3rd capacity. Yeah? He thinks about Tyson Fury number 1, 2 and 3 right now. And then Dubois number 4. Joe Joyce number 5. If Joe Joyce goes with Eddie Hearn, that WBO shot is going to get made ASAP. No Rocky. Yeah? Because Eddie Hearn going to do everything he can. He'll move heaven and earth to get it done ASAP. So that he can get... Because Eddie Hearn said the other day, he thinks Joe Joyce will beat Usyk. So... you best believe Eddie Hearn will be all over that. And don't forget also, Eddie Hearn's already worked with Team Usyk. So it's easy to do. Yeah? Frank Warren hasn't worked with Team Usyk. It'll be very easy and smooth to do. Right now, by Joe Joyce sitting there and just cucking himself, you're cucked. Bottom line, I'm telling you now, Joe Joyce ain't going to fight no one for nothing for the next year or 18 to 2 years. And before I go, I want to play this last clip again.
Where would you like to go next? Is it as simple as Alexander Usyk?
Well, Joe knows this. We've had conversations about it. The unification looks like it's going to happen early next year. So Joe will fight early next year as well, and that set himself up to be
Undisputed will happen early next year, but Joe will fight anyway. So he's telling you, Joe, you have another leading nowhere fight. Now, who's that likely to be? I'd love to see Joyce versus White. Is that likely? I think the odds on that are low. Why? Who is Joe Joyce to Dillian White? No one. Is it a big money fight? Is Joe Joyce a big enough money fight for Dillian White to want to lose to him? And And let's not forget, people, if Dillian White loses, that's 2 in a row. If Dillian White loses to the relative up-and-comer Joe Joyce, in Dillian White's mind, that puts him out of the Deontay Wilder fight, potentially. That puts him out of the AJ rematch, potentially. If Joe Joyce beats Dillian White, AJ might as well just rematch to fight Joe Joyce, in that sense. Dillian White will be properly washed up at that point. Now, if Joe Joyce has a WBO, Dillian White will be all over it, naturally. But that's what I'm saying. Team Joyce right now should be all in getting that WBO strap ASAP, whether it means stripping Usyk or fighting him. That's what Team Joyce should be on 24/7. Not Holiday, not anything else, not Undisputed. That's what they should be on. That's what they should be focused on. Because Frank Warren just told you what his plans are. His plans are to have you sitting around doing fuck all again for the last 2 years like you've been doing. Don't forget that, people. Joyce beat Dubois 2 years ago. He's only just fought a relevant fight 2 years later. That's what Frank Warren thinks of Joe Joyce. Fighting one decent fight once every 2 years. That's Frank Warren's proven he's happy to do that. He's happy for Joe Joyce to fight once a blue moon. That's not a good look. And he's just told you, Undisputed will happen, and we'll get Joe Joyce out there again. So as I've explained, it's very low, less than 20% chance, Joe Joyce is going to be able to fight a Wilder, a Dillian White, or whoever else. Now that might make some sense. Fair enough, YB. He's got no belt, but he's going to have a Wilder or Dillian White fight. If that was the case, fair play. It's not the case. Guarantee you, Wilder's not going to fight Joyce. Andy Ruiz ain't going to fight Joyce. There'd have to be huge money behind Joyce. And I'm sorry, at this point there isn't. At this particular point in time, Joe Joyce doesn't have that clout. If I'm wrong, listen, if Frank Warren pulls off Andy Ruiz, a Wilder, a Dillian White fight for that March occasion, still, I'd rather have the belt. Still, if I was Team Joyce, I'd be pursuing the belt. But you know what? Kind of fair play. It's a huge fight. But putting that to one side, my bets are, I'm 80% sure Joe Joyce, if he stays doing what he's currently doing, which is nothing, if he doesn't pursue this situation, he's not going to get the WBO fight, and he's not going to get a big fight. He will get another Christian Hammer, another Bumslayer fight. Now, is that what Joe Joyce deserves? He's just had 2 years of Bumslayer fights after a year of inactivity. That's a crime, in my opinion. We got one of the most prime dudes, one of the most prime prospects, and he's fighting Christian Hammers. Not through his fault. We know it's not because Joyce wants to have it. Listen, Joe Joyce, that's for me what makes it more frustrating. Joe Joyce ain't Tyson Fury, who loves to fight bums. Joe Joyce ain't a bumslayer. He fights bums because he can't get no better fights. And that's why it gets down to the core of my being, what's going on here with Joe Joyce. But again, ultimately, if Joe don't clock this, if Joe wants to listen to the lies Frank Warren is telling him, I can't do nothing. Joe himself has to take this. It's your life, my man. It's your life, it's your career. If you want to keep being there, again, don't take my word for it. I've said for a long time, actions and outcomes speak louder than anything. Joe, what have been the actions of Frank? What have been your outcomes with Frank for the last 2 years since he got you the Dubois fight? Guess what? We know what Dubois has done. Dubois, since losing to you, has gone on to win the WBA regular belt, which means he has direct mandatory for the WBA, which, by the way, is up next. I've been said this. Why didn't Frank Warren maneuver Joyce, the winner of the Dubois confrontation? Why didn't Frank Warren maneuver Joyce into the WBA regular? Oops. Again, that there is violating Frank Warren's duty as a client of Joe Joyce. I'm sorry, no court is going to sit there and say, wait a minute, Frank, Joyce beat this guy, and yet you give him the opportunity. That there shows clear bias. Clear bias. There's no rational explanation for that, apart from you see Joe Joyce, or you've been treating Joe Joyce less favourably. Frank Warren should be saying, Joe, you're the winner of the Dubois fight. I'm going to put you in all the positions, all the top positions. Joe Joyce should have fought for the regular belt, which now would mean he's number 1 in WBO and he's number 1 in WBA. That means he's going to get a shot next. Instead, Dubois essentially got next on the 3 belts. The WBA is the next mandatory. It's not the WBO, which is a lie Frank Warren's been telling Joe Joyce. Again, why is he lying for?
As well, and that set himself up to be for the mandatory, because I think the W fight early next year as well, and that set himself up to be for the mandatory, because I think the WBO is the next one in, so he's the interim champion.
There you go then. He fit, and you can tell. Too many, I've never heard Frank Warren stuttering so much. That's how you know he's running game. He just said, he's mandatory, WBO's next. Not believable. Now, people who don't know the situation, like I know the situation, will believe that. Oh yeah, Joe's next. Frank Warren just said Joe's next, WBO's next. I've just exposed the WBO is not next. The WBA is next, and that's his man, Dubois. What will happen when the WBA gets ordered next year? Frank Warren will say, oh, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, Joe. I thought I made a mistake. And that's the point I'm making. Joe Joyce's team, they're supposed to be on this thing. They're supposed to be the ones with this, in control of the situation. Joe Joyce's team are not supposed to take the lead from a man who has obligations elsewhere. It's not like you can say, well, YB, Frank Warren don't have no heavyweights. No, he has 2 prime heavyweights who is clearly putting ahead of Joe Joyce. So anyone out there, if anyone out there knows Joe Joyce personally, please tell him to watch this video, because it's not me hating. Honestly, all I want is to see Joe Joyce fight Usyk. That's all I want, honestly. That's all I want. If I thought that Team Joyce were doing their thing, I'd be more than happy to come on here, and I'm not a weirdo. I just want things to be right. And at the moment, especially when you look at it historically, people say, YB, you're jumping on the bandwagon. You clowns ain't got a clue. Back in 2021, I was going mad on the fact that Usyk was... I went mad initially when that fight was ordered between Joyce and Usyk. I went mad then, complaining. Why is this half pint allowed off the hook? He ain't done shit at heavyweight. I was pissed off that Usyk got to go from nothing straight into the AJ fight. Usyk should have been made to fight Joyce back then. And now here we are. 2 years on, Joyce has not moved anywhere. He's got a win against Parker, irrelevant, for what it's worth. And now Frank Warren's setting him up to fight a bum. A random stay busy fight. That's what's coming next, but I guarantee you. I'm 80% sure it will be Joyce versus Randomer in Q1 in March. That's what it will be. And the reason I'm so keen, and the reason it's so urgent right now, because if Team Joyce don't do anything until March, or even until January or whenever, if Team Joyce wait until Undisputed is being negotiated, you're fucked. It's too late then. The minute Undisputed's on the cards, then you really are fucked. But as of now, when there's no negotiations for Undisputed, that's when you can make real change. Once Fury and Usyk have got a date, or once Fury and Usyk are in negotiations, the WBO can fob you off, saying sorry, they're in negotiations, and unification supersede mandatories. Sorry, have to sit around and be a cuck. But right now, you can say to the WBO, there is no unification. There is no Undisputed. Fury's fighting in December. Usyk wants time off. I want my shot now. And you pitch what I've just pitched for the last hour. You pitch them the fact that you can fight in February and Undisputed can take place in June. Which really is no setback, because Fury isn't fighting in December. Fury's fighting in December, which means Fury wouldn't fight until June anyway. So me and Usyk can fight in February, and then Usyk and Fury can fight in June or July, or whenever they want, to be quite frank. That's how you pitch it. Anyway, please, anyone out there, anyone out there who knows Joe Joyce, and if I'm wrong, if I've got all this wrong, someone please explain. And honestly, I'm not trying to make out I'm an insider. 100%. But if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say, you know what, people, I barked at the wrong tree. Joe Joyce's team are on this thing. But guess what? If that was the case, Joe wouldn't have fought Christian Hammer in the last 2 years, innit? From Dubois to Parker, that was 2 years. In that 2-year period, he fought Christian Hammer and another bum. Wow. That's not good enough, people. It's just not. Not for a 37-year-old man. How can a 37-year-old man spend 2 years and have only fought Christian Hammer? Nah, man, that don't work for me. That's negligence at the best, at the minimum. Please, anyone out there who knows Joe Joyce, get this video to him. Tell him to watch it. Maybe, or anyone out there who knows anything about this, if I'm wrong, let me know. I'd love to know. I'd love to understand why things are the way they are. Why is Team Joyce so loosey-goosey? It almost appears to me as if Team Joyce, they think things will fall out the sky. In this game, I mean, Dillian White, he wasn't even dangerous, and Wilder ducked him for God knows how many years. He wasn't even no good. But Wilder chose not to fight him, and it went on for years. Joe Joyce is the real deal. He got no chance in this game. Got no chance. And it almost feels to me as if Team Joyce think, I think they think, maybe they've, well, not I think Frank Warren's told them, Joe, you won't get the WBO in February, but we'll get you a huge fight against Dillian White. That's what I think he's been told. I think Team Joyce are assuming they're going to get a big fight. Not knowing that there's a chance Dillian White is happy to put it all on the line. But we know, listen, Dillian White wanted $8 million from Fury. Yeah? We know Dillian White loves big money. So I can't see him taking all the risk. And let's not lie here, people. Joe Joyce isn't a huge household name yet. He needs to get the belt first. That's what normally catapults people. It's very hard to become a global icon before you've got a world championship belt. Even AJ wasn't selling stadiums until he was unified champion, undisputed champion. Do you understand? These things don't just happen. So Team Joyce, Joe, listen, Joe, you can forget. I'm telling you now, there's a very small % chance you get a big fight. Wilder will want the Usyk, which is his way back to a belt. Wilder ain't taking no risk. Wilder didn't even fight Dillian White, fuck's sake. You can forget about that. Dillian White, he ain't gonna fight no one either. Who else is there? Andy Ruiz. He ain't gonna. All these people, are gunning for belts. They ain't gunning. Although, to be fair to Andy Ruiz, he did fight Luis Ortiz, which was a hard fight. But from what I understand, Ortiz versus Ruiz, that was a WBC final eliminator. Andy Ruiz now is set to fight Tyson Fury. That's what that process was about. So Andy Ruiz ain't fighting you for nothing. Now, to be fair, Joe Joyce does have the WBO thing going on. So Dillian White might say, if I beat Joe Joyce, I take his WBO mandatory. So maybe the Dillian White fight, there is a possibility. But still, guess what? That if Joe Joyce and his team pursue the WBO, that Dillian White fight don't go nowhere. Do you get what I'm saying? If potentially Team Joyce, have got the Dillian White thing lingering, that doesn't go anywhere. If you get your mandatory of Usyk, great. That Dillian White fight's always there to fall back on, if it's there. I'm not sure it is. But right now, you've got nothing guaranteed. That's not a good position to be in. And your team, their sole focus every day they wake up should be to get. Our job every day is to get our man Joe something guaranteed. That's their sole purpose for the next month. It's key you act now as well, when you're hot. It's no good in November, everything's cooled down, everyone's forgotten about you. using your name and your clout, that's when you can make the most damage. The people are behind you. If it comes out in the newspaper, Joe Joyce suing the WBO for his shot after Usyk shit himself in 2021, if that comes out, it's impactful. If you wait until Undisputed's actually on or being negotiated, all of a sudden people will start saying, oh, why is Joe being awkward? Oh, why is Joe, you know what I mean? You gotta think about these things. Yeah? You gotta be, I don't know what Joe's team are doing. I think a lot of these guys, yeah, there's 90 IQ cats. They ain't sharp. They ain't firing on all cylinders. I think a lot of average people are in these positions, you see, and you know what I mean? It's one of them ones. A lot of average dudes who wouldn't cut it at the top level, yeah, in business, are just knocking about. That's what it is. And I'm not saying I'm a great business guy. I'm just telling you what time it is. Yeah? And if I'm wrong, again, I've been tweeting these cats for God knows how long. I've been tweeting all of Team Joyce, essentially begging them to tell me what the situation is, or, you know what I mean, to do something about it. They haven't said nothing. And I'm a small fry, so you can say, well, YB, maybe they didn't see it. Maybe they didn't. Anyway, listen. Anyone out there who knows Joe, please get this to Joe. Please get this video to someone who knows Joe. Please get this video to someone who cares about Joe. That's the main thing. Because anyone who cares about Joe will take what I'm saying seriously. Anyone who has the best interest, that's all I've got. All I've got is the best interest. I don't even know the guy. I'm not financially incentivized at any level. But from the sports point of view, I believe the sport will be a better place when Joe Joyce fights Usyk. Yeah? Much better place than it is currently. Because currently, we've got a middleweight knocking around, charading as a unified heavyweight champion. Now, it's not Usyk's fault. I blame the big buff Usyk bodybuilder, but that's why Joe Joyce needs to be brought in to restore some order. Either way you look at it, if Joe Joyce wins, then we can all say, yeah, that's what it means to be big and buff. If Usyk wins, we can then say, yeah man, Usyk's the real deal. Currently, we can't say either of them, because Usyk hasn't beat a big, strong, on-game heavyweight. He hasn't done that. Yeah? He beat an old, washed-up, D-level Chisora, and he beat a useless, heartless bodybuilder with no gas tank. That don't count. That's not a unified performance, I'm afraid to say. Smash the like button, subscribe, and your boy will be back 100%.